One is a silent epic that consumes most of your day, the other a swashbuckling adventure that has probably helped to invent modern footplay. The Thief of Baghdad, They Remade It.
Hi, and welcome back to another episode of They Remade It. I'm your host, Stuart.
And I'm your host, Jacob.
Just enjoying this lovely, at time of recording, later fall day. March. What am I talking about?
Later fall? What are you talking? Wasn't the first day of spring, yesterday?
It was,
No, it's
yeah.
today, isn't it? The 21st? No, it was yesterday. Okay.
Yeah, yesterday was the equinox.
Yeah, I'm getting confused today. We're in spring now.
Yeah. God, that's weird.
Okay.
I wanted winter to keep going. I don't like spring.
I prefer the warmer stuff anyway, so I'm happy.
Yeah.
Warm over cold.
Once autumn comes back around, I'll just be like, oh, yeah.
Okay, well, this is a hell talking to you, so how about you go ahead and tell me instead what you've been up to?
Just, going to the park on the weekends, hanging out. Oh, you mean about films? You never care about my day, do you?
Well, you can tell me about your day all you want, but you really sit there in 30-degree weather?
No, I'm an idiot. I barely leave the house.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
You got me. You gaslit me.
But yeah, just been kind of hanging out with watching movies a bit more casually. I haven't gone out to see a movie in a while now. I finally saw. Did I bring it up last time that I had seen the newest Star is Born?
No, you told me off show, but it was in between last one and then this one. So
yeah, I had just been thinking about that one again, and I rewatched some scenes just because I thought they were good.
Yeah.
After that, I actually watched a couple of things with my roommate the other night. Watched the Sweeney Todd, Demon Barber of Fleet Street, The Lovely Bones, which was kind of like a murder mystery thing, and one other that I am now forgetting.
That selection of titles, though, you didn't even have to say roommate. I already know who you were watching them with.
And then there's one more I can't remember we watched that night. I will not lie, I was drinking. So, other than that, I've also been watching this new anthology show on Netflix called Love and Death and Robots.
Oh my god. I had okay, so we're not on my thing yet, but I have been watching a couple movies on Netflix, going back to it because their selection has improved since the last time I was on there. And every single movie I've watched during the credits, they try to play that trailer for me. And can you explain to me what the show's about? Because I don't like Netflix trying to sell their trailers to me, so I just skip it.
It's just like an anthology of each episode is a different animator and story type. I think there might be some kind of connection between them, but I haven't really noticed. I haven't paid attention that hard. But it's the first episode is about these bioengineered robot animal creatures that fight in a death pit, and then another episode is about cyborg humans robbing a high-speed transport sort of thing. It's each one is semi 3D graphics, but also actual 2D animation kind of mixed in with it. It's actually really cool.
And so each one's about robots? Or has robots in it?
Yeah, I think so. If not, it's at the very least just very sci-fi. I think there's this one episode that I've just started that doesn't involve them, but I just started. They might pop up by the end, but most of them are just heavy sci-fi, heavy robots and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think it's pretty cool.
Maybe I'll check it out then. It just sounded, from the sound of the title, I just thought it was another half-assed attempt at a sci-fi show by Netflix that was all, I don't know, one of those weird off DC or Marvel shows that Netflix ran.
Mm-hmm.
But sci-fi themed. That's what it sounded like to me.
Yeah, and I kind of thought a similar thing as well, because I saw a few things pop up around Tumblr. It just seemed like an anime thing, but then it I actually decided to watch the first one. And I was like, oh, if it is anime, it's at least good.
Anime can be good. That's what I've been saying.
All right. Jeez, I still need to watch Cowboy Bebop.
You do still need to watch. It's not even that long. It's like 24 episodes or
I
something like
know,
that.
but still, I never remember.
I know it is sort of anything like that. Any sort of show is an investment. Is that all that you've been doing though?
I believe so. As always, like just in the background at work, I just play like movie scenes that I've watched before, or just like cartoons. It's like I'll just have various scenes up in the background, just like kind of to fill the void and everything. But nothing like nothing big. Just like, oh, here's that scene from fucking Wonder Woman or something, and I was like, oh, that's a cool soundtrack. I'll have that going on.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I've been meaning to go back out to the movies, but it's has there been a whole lot out recently? I mean, it's kind of we're kind of the post Oscars lull right now.
Not that I know of, not that I certainly care about. I mean, Dumbo is premiering soon, and that's one of those things that, good or bad, I want to see it in the theater.
Right, and I mean, obviously, same.
So, and I mean, that's what, the 28th of this month.
I
It's
think
somewhere around the end
so.
of the. It's somewhere around the end of the month. So I'm gonna try and hit the theaters to see that because yeah, last time I was at the theaters I think was in January for Into the Spider Verse.
Gotcha.
Mm.
I think I was around the same time.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Um.
So what have you been watching then?
Okay. Well, I saw Wreck It Ralph 2.
Nice. What'd you
Um.
think?
I didn't like it that much.
Oh, really?
It didn't.
I've been hearing that from a lot of people. I actually really liked it.
I mean, it's not like I thought it was bad, but it seemed. I don't know. It seemed like a generic kids film this time around, and I think part of it is because the attraction that I had to the first movie was because it was so video game focused, and this one was not. It was more so internet focused, which I wasn't that drawn in by. I didn't care as much. You still get
Yeah,
some of
I
that.
get
You
that.
still get some of that gaming stuff in there, but the major video game setting they have is like some GTA made up thing that they did. Which they made up stuff in the other one too. I get it, but it was just a shift in setting and plot and well, I'm not even
Right.
wording it correctly because obviously you want to shift in those things for a sequel.
Well,
You know
right,
what
but
I mean?
I get what you mean. It's like it was went from kind of a cool like niche focus like arcade games and everything to just kind of
Yeah,
like it was
a
fresh off the
theme.
heels of the fresh off the heels of Emoji Movie. We're not exactly thrilled
Yeah,
to be seeing all this stuff.
it did like a switch in theme or
Yeah.
something like that. It had good theming in the first one, and this one had different theming that I wasn't as into. I mean, and not to mention, especially near the end, a lot of the virus stuff is on the nose. Um,
Yeah.
However, when they were in the Disney section, I saw Humphrey the Bear in the background,
Oh.
and I was like, "Whoa, that's got to be the first time Humphrey the Bear has been in theaters since like the '60s when he still had when he still had Disney shorts going on."
Yeah.
So that was neat.
That's cool.
Um, I saw Annie Hall again because I set a New Year's resolution and I've been sleeping on it a little bit, but that I was going to see all the Best Picture winners, try to see all the Best Picture winners this year, with the exception of Shape of Water and The Departed, since I saw those last year.
Yeah, and one of which was less than good.
Yeah. Well, I figured a good way to sort of put myself into that mindset to sort of get on the ball and actually do it again would be to start with ones that I've seen before. So I did Annie Hall, and I think I'm going to do Silence of the Lambs here in a couple days. But I mean that's that. I think I've talked about that movie before. Uh, and I saw the documentary Behind the Curve that's been making waves
Uh,
on Netflix.
yeah, I don't know that one.
It is the Flat Earth documentary.
Oh yeah, some of our friends were talking about that not too long ago. We
They
actually got back together for a little bit, but
Yeah, they were talking about it and they were explaining the one part which I had known about beforehand because it's been memed to hell and back on the internet. But like the fact that they prove the antithesis of their own theory in the movie
and
accidentally, and then they're
and
like, "Well, this is must be wrong. This can't be real." Uh,
yeah, that's just that's the epitome of the modern age now, isn't it?
the thing is, though, that happens like 3 different times in the movie, all with different
Wow.
experiments. The movie ends on an experiment failing, like right before it cuts to credits. Like they have these posts that they stick up, and it's like this. All 3 posts are the same height, and we have them separated across this body of water, and we're going to shoot a laser through it. And if it does this, then the Earth is flat, and if it does this, then the Earth is curved. And they try doing it under the Earth is flat circumstances, and the laser doesn't reach the board. And then they try it under the curved circumstance, and it passes through all 3 boards.
Mm-hmm.
And it just sort of shows a close up on one of the guy's face. He goes, "Oh," and then it goes to credits, and
Oh, that is so good.
and of course they have scenes during the credits where they start talking about the experiment. It's like, well, someone brought up that under the flat Earth test there were weeds in the way. So even then they're still explaining away what happened. But
yeah, I know. It's explaining away. They're not explaining away. They're making the excuse.
right, well, it's
Like
that
it's just
whole
like
thing is a mess.
that. That's literally reminds me of like the fucking. And I'll avoid going into this in depth because this isn't the science podcast. But it literally, it reminds me of a scene from Carl Sagan's Cosmos where he literally talks about how an ancient Greek philosopher was able to put together the exact circumference of the Earth because there were 2 monoliths, one in Athens and another one in like Alexandria or somewhere in Egypt. And he was able to learn that at the same time of day on the same day their shadows were different lengths and was able to calculate the circumference of the Earth because of it. It was like this was in -1000 or something.
No, those people are crazy. Okay, one more thing, and then I'll end this because this is the last movie I've seen. But
Right.
so the documentary follows a bunch of different heavy hitters in the flat Earth community, but there are 2 main ones that like host a YouTube show or something that has a lot of episodes now where they just discuss flat Earth news, I guess. Hmm.
How much
Uh,
news is there?
Apparently a lot. Like every week they get more news or something like that.
So
But
yeah, someone else came up with another quote unquote disproving experiment.
I don't.
Anyway,
But their
anyway,
names.
watch me drink this
What
lead
are their
paint.
names? Their names are Mark and Patricia, or Patricia, however they pronounce it.
Who gives a
And
shit?
well,
I'll mispronounce him. I'll call him Mork.
at one point in time in the movie, they're talking about how, well, some of the flat earthers in the society or in the organization or whatever are such big conspiracy theorists that they think because Mark and Patricia are able to interview these people and they have such fame that they're actually government agents inserted into the community to like overthrow it or like dismantle it or something. So you get these interviews with like Patricia where she sits down, she's like, I show them my birth certificate, I show them photos of my brother and my sister and my mother, and they just explain it away as, oh, you're a government agent, so you can forge that stuff. It feels so infuriating to just have someone so heavily into the conspiracy theory just dismantle everything that you say without any proof. And I was just like screaming like, you're doing that. That's the exact same thing that you're doing.
Yeah, and I'm sure the people who made the documentary are completely in on the whole quote unquote joke of the situation.
Oh, probably. But they even have a scene with her in the car like during the same moment where she's talking about it and she's like, I just don't know. Sometimes I wonder if I'm the same as them, just in a different way. Someone who's getting so far into the conspiracy theories that they can't even see where actual fact is. And then it like pauses for 4 seconds and then she says, but I know that's not the case. And I'm like, what?
She can see sunlight. She just needs to swim towards it.
What are you talking about? It's okay
Why?
to have discourse and not believe, but you're literally like,
I
you
mean,
just poo-poo everything.
I'm sure she's probably trying to save face for the camera, at least for her own community. Because, like, I'm sure once you get that popular, you kind of start making money off the YouTube channel. You probably don't want to just like toss it all away for some documentary.
Pro- Probably that's probably what it is. I
I'm
don't
sure
know.
that's
That
what
was crazy.
I'm all but certain. I'm sure a lot of those people probably are doing that exact thing just for the money. Because like no one is like there are a few people that are that dumb.
I I would like to think so.
Yeah, I mean, okay, I'm hopeful.
I
I'm just hopeful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I think
would
we can.
watch that though. I haven't seen a documentary in a very long time. Even the two I watched for the Oscars, I have not seen one that held my attention so much because it just kept amping how crazy it was.
Wow.
Like now there's an artist in the community that thinks he's the king of flat earth and he's trying to defame everyone. I was like, I can't tell where this is going at any given time. I,
God, truth is stranger than fiction, people. It just like we could go on about all these weird movies all we want. Reality is always going to come up with the most weird shit.
it will. It
It's
will.
the kind of
And
weird
it
shit
does.
that if someone tried to make a movie about it, like a dramatized movie about it, someone would call it too outrageous.
Yeah.
Like, without editing a thing.
That would be in the column. That'd be in the Chicago Sun Tribune or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah.
Like, it's not realistic enough, but it tries to play itself off as realistic. Nope, that's...
On that note, shall we talk about some Arabian fairy tales?
Yeah, something way more realistic.
Yeah.
Tale of magical flying horses and carpets and feet.
Hell,
We're
they probably
going
make
to-
reference to the Earth being round in their society.
They might.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they already. I'm pretty sure they knew at that point. I mean, hell, fucking if the Greeks figured it out, the Arabians definitely did.
With that being said, let's dive right into the plot of The Thief of Baghdad, 1924. Ahmed, Douglas Fairbanks, plays a thief living in Baghdad, taking as he pleases from everyone indiscriminately. Among the things he manages to steal is a magic rope that can stiffen in the air. Later, Ahmed uses this rope to sneak into the palace of the Caliph, played by Brandon Hurst, and steal from the rich and give to himself. However, he becomes infatuated with the sleeping princess, played by Julianne Johnston, and flees the palace, determined to snatch her away, somehow. As it turns out, soon enough the day comes for the princess to choose from a group of suitors to be wed to. Beforehand, she is told by her soothsayer, I guess, that she is to wed the first of the men to touch the rose bush out in the garden. A portly Persian, played by Mathilde Comant, a lanky, scowling Indian man, played by Noble Johnson, and a Mongol prince named Cham Shang, played by Sojin Kamiyama, secretly plotting to add Baghdad to his massive regime, by force if necessary. Eventually, Ahmed rides in pretending to be a suitor and ends up touching the rose bush accidentally, which is more than enough for the princess to be convinced that he's the one. Unfortunately, one of the princess's handmaids is a Mongolian spy and informs Cham Shang that Ahmed is a common thief. The Mongol tells everyone at dinner, and Ahmed is captured only to escape thanks to the princess. She tells the suitors she will then wed the person who brings her the rarest treasure within 7 days. Thus, Ahmed sets out on a dangerous journey to find the greatest treasure. In the meantime, the Persian obtains a magic carpet that can fly, the Indian a magic crystal with all-seeing sight, and Cham Shang obtaining a golden apple that can revive the dead. The three meet up, and Cham Shang asks the Indian to check in on the princess. They do, find out she's deathly ill, since the Mongol spy had poisoned her, and they take off on the magic carpet, flying straight to Baghdad. Meanwhile, Ahmed gets an invisibility cloak and a powder that creates whatever he wants via killing a bunch of monsters and talking to trees and shit. Back in Baghdad, Cham Shang saves the princess with the golden apple, but she still can't decide because she sees all gifts as being equally important in saving her life. Shang has a load of Mongolians hiding in the city, however, and then decides to have them seize it. News of this somehow gets to Ahmed, and since he's scared of Cham Shang getting a domination victory, he runs to the city and creates a large army with the powder. He breaks into the palace, Cham Shang is presumably captured by the guards, and Ahmed and the princess are set to be married. The end. And now on to The Thief of Baghdad, 1940. So, starting this off, there's a blind grifter with a dog who begin the movie by telling a story to a group of women. Now, the man, named Ahmad, played by John Justin, was once the Sultan of Baghdad. He's betrayed by his vizier, Jafar, not Jafar, played by Conrad Veidt, and is thrown into the dungeon. Soon enough, a thief named Abu, played by Sabu, is thrown in, and the thief helps Ahmad escape. They flee to Basra, where Ahmad discovers the princess, played by June Dupré, and professes his love to her. At the same time, Jafar comes to town with a gift horse for the toy-obsessed Sultan of Basra, played by Miles Malleson, and it's basically a flying mechanical equine. He promises to give it to the Sultan if he gives his daughter to him to be wed. The Sultan obliges, and when she is sent for, Ahmad and Abu are found. Jafar curses Ahmad to be blind and transforms Abu into a dog, which brings us back to present day, revealing the nature of the blind man and his pet. One of the women he tells the story to, Halima, played by Mary Morris, informs him that the princess was bought from a slave market recently and is there with them. Ahmad is essentially tricked into waking her for Jafar, who is Halima's master, and he then whisks her and the dog, still Abu, onto his boat. He throws Abu overboard and then kisses the princess, curing Ahmad of his blindness and turning Abu back into a person. They give chase only for Jafar to shipwreck them with magic. Jafar again attempts to convince the Sultan of Basra to wed his daughter to him, bringing him a toy which stabs the Sultan to death. Meanwhile, Abu finds a genie in a bottle on the beach he was taken to, the genie being played by Rex Ingram, and tricks the genie into giving him 3 wishes. After a stupid waste of a wish, he has the genie take him to a temple where he steals an all-seeing crystal to locate Ahmad, who is hanging out in the Grand Canyon of all places. Once the two are reunited, they fight a bit, and Ahmad is transported to Baghdad accidentally via Abu's final wish. Once there, Ahmad is captured along with the princess, and Jafar plans to kill them both. Abu, witnessing this, smashes the crystal and is taken to a land beyond time, I guess, where he steals a carpet and magic bow from an old man promising him to be some form of sultan and flies to Baghdad, where he unclimactically shoots Jafar with a magic arrow. Ahmad and the princess are wed, and Abu flies off to partake in more adventure elsewhere.
Yeah, that ending was a little rushed, it felt like.
Very insane. I didn't get it. I knew what was happening, but I'm like, why? Oh well.
I'm here, but why?
We got to this point, but how and why? And
should
why?
I care?
Should I care even? Hey, that being said, though, we are not completely done yet, as we still have full circle to go through. So brace yourself. This is going to be a relatively short one. First of all, for The Thief of Baghdad, 1924, we have Brandon Hearst, who was not only the Caliph in The Thief of Baghdad, but was also a Citizens Committee member in Scarface, 1932. So, basically more background work.
Yeah.
That's all a lot of these things ever are. People double as extras and leads all the time. But moving right along straight into The Thief of Baghdad 1940, that was the only one for 24.
I figured there would be something for like What Price Hollywood or something.
Nope, not this time. Not for either, really.
Huh.
But for Thief of Baghdad 1940, we have Eugene Joseph, who was costume jeweler for The Thief of Baghdad and for 1937's A Star is Born. Close, but no cigar.
Well.
It's worth noting, though, that we previously covered Eugene's wife, Joan Joseph, because she was the costume jeweler on both 1969's True Grit and 1978's Halloween. So, a husband and wife costume jewelry pair, and we've covered both of them now through 4 films.
How's that for a full circle?
Yeah. Wally Weavers did a lot of visual effects work for The Thief of Baghdad 1940 and for The Day of the Jackal 1973. And a man by the name of Leslie Phillips played a street urchin in the Baghdad market in The Thief of Baghdad 1940, and he was Woolburton in 1997's The Jackal.
That
which is
all right.
Like what is that? A 57-year gap. So,
oh my God, yeah.
I want to dive into his career more, see what else he did.
Dive into the main character of 1924's career from what we looked at. We'll find one hell of a circle on that one.
Oh, you talking about oh yeah, Douglas Fairbanks.
Mm-hmm.
That's all for Full Circle though, so let's get into the meat and potatoes of this. And
Yes,
I'm
yes, yes, yes.
I'm gonna start off this real quick because I have something I do want to discuss.
Uh-huh.
The first one, the 1924 version, is way too long for what it is.
A little bit, and that tends to be a problem with some of the more dramatic silent films.
Yeah. Uh, to be honest, I haven't seen too many silent films. I think when I was after I first watched this film, I was talking to you about it, and I was like, it is so long, and I'm wondering if that's just because I wasn't into the material. Because thinking back on it, I think Metropolis might be just as long, if not longer, but it didn't feel like it. So I
It,
think I
mm,
was more into that feature.
it, it might be. I've seen more silent films, not a whole lot more, but I've seen a lot of the Buster Keaton pictures and Charlie Chaplin, Metropolis. Obviously, my probably one of my favorites is Nosferatu.
Oh yeah, I've seen. Well, that one's not that long either. That's like an hour and a half.
Yeah. Um, but beyond that, I think that's the most of them. But I gotta say, I actually really, really like silent films. They are an investment when they're the longer ones, obviously. But I love the style that they can bring across and everything that they do. I mean, Metropolis is a visual landmark. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Nosferatu is one of the very first horror movies and also codified so much about the vampire mythos. Like, it was the first movie to actually have the idea of vampires die in sunlight.
Yeah,
Um, and so
and
they,
it's really nice looking set design. That expressionist feeling that was in Cabinet of Dr. Caligari.
yeah, it's just it's a just like I love how the limit like it felt like there was kind of a limitless potential of films in that age because they kind of just went balls to the wall with set design and just casting and everything where even in this one with Thief of Baghdad, the city of Baghdad, it felt so lively and like the set design was livelier than a lot of the cities and everything we've seen on this show for things in the modern era. I was
Yeah,
just like, yeah, this feels like a full city, even though the background is clearly just like some geometric shapes and everything. But the way it's presented and the lighting and everything, it feels just astonishing.
I
I loved it to pieces.
I agree. I like it too. I like silent films too. Where
Hmm.
we have a couple that we're thinking about for the future of the show actually.
Yeah.
But when I say the movie's too long, that's less a
Yeah.
fault of the plot and the story and more a fault of how horribly paced it is. Like the
Yeah.
opening of the movie is him running around stealing things, which he steals the magic rope, which is an important plot point for how he gets into the palace. But he's doing that for about 20 minutes. I checked the timer and he's doing that for 20 minutes. So many
Yeah.
things that can be cut or not even cut but just whittled down because there's no flow.
Hmm. And I do think, and obviously it's like as movies have come along, it's definitely they've kind of found a kind of Goldilocks zone for characterization and that sort of thing. Even still, like this one did seem to drag. It's
Yeah.
just and it just seemed to kind of gloss over other aspects. Like there's an entire scene where, or several scenes where he is going through this cave of trials where he's doing things like fighting monsters and reviving a tree person and like swimming to the bottom of a huge ocean, almost getting lured into like a den of harpies or selkies or whatever they are. Then flying up to the highest point in the mountain, which is there's a mountain in this cave now, getting the gem or the magic dust and everything and the horse, and it's just like holy, what this is happening almost background. Like it's cutting between this and seeing the other princes retrieving their magical gifts, which also kind of go on for a significant amount of time. It's just it was weird.
They kind of do, don't they? So for Chim Shang, who is the Mongolian prince,
Yeah.
um, his part of the 7 days sort of thing goes on for a little while. but I don't necessarily mind. You need to see what the apple does. Andy's the villain, so you need more time spent on the villain than you do the other chuckle fucks. But there's way much time spent on like the fat Persian man picking up the carpet at the market and like giggling to himself. Like that does
Yeah.
not need to be as long as it was.
And also, can I just
But
say, this is kind of more just an admonishment of just like the mythos than anything. How jam packed with treasures and everything are all these Arabian cities and markets that they can just kind of casually show off these miraculous items.
I
Like
don't
this
know.
one, like street busker is just showing off this magically self extending rope. The magic carpet dealer is literally just kind of just has it in front of his stall and everything. It's just like the only thing that actually had a bit of security were the magic apple and then the magic dusk that you know dang it, what's the thief's name in the 24 version?
Oh, and Ahmed,
Ahmed.
Ahmed, not Ahmad.
Yeah, Ahmed. Yeah, Ahmed.
Very, very different.
It's like it's like the magic dust that Ahmed is able to find. It's like it's just funny to think about all these other things. It's like, oh no, this is just pretty normal.
Well, that's the thing. He goes like on a trek for his stuff, however long and poorly geographically mapped it is. It's like a quest. He's not just going to the store and picking it up. Which,
Right.
by the way, if I remember correctly, when the Persian goes to pick up that magic carpet, there's a line of dialogue or a title card of dialogue, whatever, where it's discussed that the vendor doesn't know that the magic carpet is magic. Is the vendor like an idiot, or how did everyone else know and he didn't know?
I
Does
don't
it
really
look
know.
different than all the other carpets?
I don't really know. I think they just kind of glossed over that one.
They do that quite a lot.
And but like, and all of that being said, it does still, I do still like it, even at the kind of casualness of it, because it does kind of breathe a life into this world that they have a little bit better than it does for the 1940 version, which like it's just kind of like a redo of like Errol Flynn more or less, where it's just kind of like
Yeah.
these are like this is the world. It is sort of different, but for the most part, it's actually pretty tame. And it's like, oh, this guy has a bunch of like magical toys. Whoa! But then otherwise, it's like, I mean, all right, don't really do anything to set up any of that. Like, oh, he just has these miraculous toys, and oh, this guy's suddenly magic. It's like we haven't really established the rules of this world yet. You're just kind of saying these things are happening.
Yeah, so the 1924 one I think has a problem with pacing, but the 1941 really doesn't because actions happen and they go with it like almost immediately. There wasn't a slow moment in the movie, but to that end it was too fast. There were too many things going on.
Right.
And I remember saying it once before to you. I thought the movie ended like 3 times.
It did. Like, it
It
really just had a bunch of these random moments, like the Grand Canyon, Land Before Time, arrow through the chest and everything. Or chest. I don't even remember how he killed him.
it was like a long shot. So when I think I rewinded it. I think it hit Jaffer, but in the first shot, it looks like it hits the horse and he just plummets to his death because the horse like falls apart because
Right.
it's mechanical.
Right. And that's why I was confused with it. I was like, wait, how did it happen? And by that point, like, obviously, by the end, I wasn't terribly invested. I was just kind of like, this is kind of like somehow dragging, but also confusingly fast. Like
Yeah,
they bring in a lot of plot points at the end. Like the second half is just like plot point after plot point every couple of minutes. It's like, the first half it's kind of setting up, oh, the king or sultan, it's kind of, I don't know, it the leader of Baghdad is, kind of naive and letting Jafar rule everything. Oh no, he's learning of the ins and outs of the true treachery that Jafar is setting up. Oh no, he's met this poor thief and everything. It's like it's kind of setting up this very almost realistic portrayal of this kind of like fall from grace, and then must, like, not even fall from grace, just fall from status, and then must regain through humility kind of story, and then it just starts throwing in the magic and the blindness and the dog and everything. And you're just like, what? Like it sets up in the very beginning of things. I was starting to think, oh, this blind man explaining this story of, oh, this dog was actually once a little thief that was, a great hero for what he has done, but was cursed in the end. And I was once a rich man, but I'm now cursed with blindness and everything. I thought it was going to end up being like kind of a, like how it kind of set it up in the 24 version, at least at the end, that it was really meant to be like a fable kind of thing. Like, oh, this is kind of telling the story of how a blind man and a dog can be much more than what they appear or something. But then it's just like, it sets that up, and then it immediately comes back around at the third of the way through mark, and they immediately get cured again. It's like, what?
Yeah, that was strange. I've never really been a big fan of a framing device
Right.
that doesn't take up the whole movie, that is just like a story
Yeah.
and then it picks up from there, because it can be confusing. You can get lost in it.
And also, it didn't really set up these characters that much. I figured there's going to be a much longer journey to see how he got to this point. But it was like, no, his character's pretty much established from the first scene we see him when he's not the blind man.
Yeah.
And the same with Abu.
It was pretty much it was pretty much setting up all of the characters besides him, even to an extent Abu, since he's a dog when you see him. So
Right.
even though I'm not a big fan of that sort of framing device, I can appreciate it here, because
Mm-hmm.
otherwise they wouldn't have an adequate, I mean, they could have rewritten it obviously, but they wouldn't have an adequate way for him to get to the city where Jaffer and the princess are. They'd be blinded, he'd be a dog, and then they'd have to somehow like make their way to the city, which I think would take up even more of our time.
True.
So I
But I
I
just,
at least appreciate that.
yeah. And it did, like, it just, yeah. Like, both these movies were weird with their pacing. Which, like,
Mm-hmm.
I guess is kind of indicative of each one's per own time period of pacing. Because, like, the 40s and everything were obviously still kind of like learning the art and everything, but they, by all rights, they should have been a bit better. But at that point,
Yeah. Now, that being said, though, the 1924 Thief of Baghdad, I think, has an excellent framing device, and it makes me feel like this. They could have had a cool series of films on their hands, like each film based on a different Arabian night tale,
oh yeah,
and the
absolutely, I thought it was
opening,
amazing.
yeah, the opening and the ending could always be a story with the moral written in the stars. I thought that was really neat, and
Oh yeah,
they
like
could have done a whole franchise with that.
and like for reference for the sake of the audience, the film, the 1924 version opens with the very first opening shot. It's of a priest. I don't know what the Islamic equivalent would be. I'm gonna
It's
go with
Yeah.
priest.
We are ignorant, as it is the equivalent of a priest in that religion. I'm
Yes.
pretty. I mean, it could just be an elder, but I think it is.
Yeah, because he was the same guy who was like leading the prayer at the mosque.
Oh,
That,
you're right. He's the one that sends him
That
on the.
Ahmed had gone to
Yeah,
eventually.
he's the one that
But
sends Ahmed on the journey too.
right, and which, like, I love this whole thing's like just how it just was allowed to be steeped in this culture. Like it's literally just, it's not just like making a blatant, like a occasional reference to like, oh, Allah and that sort of thing. It literally says it's like, no, pray to Allah and His wisdom and that sort of thing. It's like, oh, this is literally going with the actual mythos.
Yeah, they say that all the time.
I
It's
should,
really
I should,
cool.
with like the mythos of the book, but then with the actual religion, which I thought was
Yeah.
incredibly cool. But yeah, the first opening shot of the film shows this priest standing on a dune with, I think, two younglings or children or just followers, and he's just kind of gesturing up at the sky, and the stars light up to say happiness is earned or must be earned. And at the very end of the movie, as Ahmed and the princess are flying off on the magic carpet across the moon, that same shot is played as he gestures up to the stars and it says happiness is earned. Because it's like, you see it at the very beginning, you're thinking, okay, that's just kind of a cute little thing. And at the very end, you're like, oh, that's the story we just watched.
Yeah.
It's really cool. It's like, it was so just cool and just, and like genuinely kind of moving to see. It's like, this is very much a fairy tale or fable or what have you from this other culture that I have never been able to see. And it's like really presenting it for, on putting it on display. And obviously, I'm sure it's not perfect. It's still played by a white actor as the main character, but still,
Yeah.
it does pretty well.
I don't want to be complete. I mean, regardless, I'm going to be ignorant, but
Obviously.
I don't want to just throw words out there like I wish they did this, I wish they did that. I want to research it and see if others were made in this style. I doubt it, but for all I know there could be. But
Right.
yeah, they could have easily done like a series of Arabian Night films. Like this epic, people from what I read loved it. It made double its budget back. So
Yeah.
they could have made more
Mm-hmm. I mean, I get
and they
maybe it
would
was
have
just like
improved over time.
I mean, it could very well have just been like growing political climate at the time. I mean, that's always it seems like it's always the case. You would never see a film like this getting made to this level and degree nowadays without it getting some serious backlash. Like just
There
like
would they I think they'd go softer on the Allah stuff.
yeah,
Definitely.
but like I'm saying, if they didn't go softer on the Allah stuff, if like they did just genuinely make it like incredibly steeped in Islamic culture, I'm sure it would get like just panned really hard.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, which sucks because like I've been meaning to research more and actually read the actual stories from the Arabian Nights, which are apparently hard to come by, but
Yeah.
um, but still, it's so cool, and it really does. You do kind of see that changing a little bit with the 40s version because like the 40s version, I shouldn't just seem so like opposite like uneven handed with my opinion. I do like the 1940s version. It's I think a better made film overall. I think the set scope and everything is much nicer, but it's also just definitely feels more like a more Americanization of the topic, which like is fine, but also it just kind of loses a bit of its cool edge.
Yeah. I to be honest, they make choices that I don't understand. They're
Yeah.
not necessarily negative, but I don't see what is gained through it. Like uh making the thief like a side character and making the main character a prince who's dethroned. I don't see much reason to do that outside to have a usurper, but 1924 just had like a man trying to conquer more dominion. Like
Right.
you can make that film. It's like they had a cool idea for the character, but then they wrote themselves into a corner. It's like, oh well, we don't have someone for him to overthrow.
I mean,
Well,
and
let's
yeah,
rewrite it or something like that.
and I do think it also kind of, like I said, goes with the Americanization thing. Like I made the joke of it earlier of it being kind of just like a rehash of Errol Flynn, but it really is. Like you even described it in the opener as a swashbuckler, which I've never been a big fan of those. Like I've tried to, like they're fun and they're like kind of cute, but like I've always just kind of thought they were kind of uncreative for the most part. Like I think you know better adventure films exist,
Mm-hmm.
and just at the time they were doing it because like it's Disney.
I mean,
Um,
I'm gonna be honest. The main reason I picked the two of these is because I hadn't seen either before, and they were labeled as swashbuckling films, and I was like, we haven't done one of those before for
True,
like genre, so I decided to pick them. And
and like I wouldn't even necessarily call the 24 version a swashbuckler because there is a lot of like actual drama in it, like
yeah,
comparatively at least.
I mean,
Um,
to be honest, there's more swordplay in the 24 version than there is in the 40 version.
True. I don't know. I'm trying to think of why I don't really consider it a swashbuckler. Then I think it's just because I was just kind of steeped in the world that it was building that it didn't feel necessarily because like a swashbuckler it doesn't really seem like there's much growth across the course of it, but it really did feel like Ahmed's character in 24 really had a bigger arc or at least a more dynamic arc going throughout it. But that might just be me.
Mm.
But it definitely didn't seem like Ahmed in the 40 version changed at all. Like he kind of started off a little naive and then he went blind, but then he was pretty much just like, "Yep, this is my character for the rest of the time." And then Abu didn't change at all.
Yeah, yeah, neither character really changes. They don't put them in like a position to change, and I feel like they try to ride around that when
Mm-hmm.
Abu is stealing the crystal because
Mm-hmm.
I think the genie asks why he cares, or no, the genie says he's probably not a good enough thief to steal the crystal, And Abu says he's going to try his best for his friend because he's always wanted to be a hero or something like that. And I think
Right.
that's them trying to show growth for the character, because outside of that, they're exactly the same. And that is a huge like downside for them having Ahmad just be this uh overthrown sultan. They didn't even make him a mean sultan that gets usurped. They made him like
Exactly.
a person of the people that the
Just didn't
people
understand what was
apparently,
happening.
yeah, he didn't know what was going on, but he was so kind. He was like, why must that man be whipped or killed? No, he was beheaded. Why is that man
Yeah.
beheaded? Or why do we must do this? I, there's no growth in that at all.
Hmm.
But I guess maybe the audience feels better because it's like the good guy gets what he deserves. I don't know.
Right. I think it's just like it just seems kind of characteristic. I think that's the main reason I don't really consider the first one to be as much as swashbuckler. And like it's really all the characters in 24 have a pretty dynamic relationship. Like even the main bad, the Mongol king, like on the surface, like and obviously there's like with that time in Hollywood, he was just played up to be this kind of just foreigner enemy type. But even still, like he didn't seem unrealistically so. Like he seemed like a Mongol king. Like at the time, that's exactly how things kind of would
Yeah,
have
he
gone.
was trying to get more land. That's what they
Right,
wanted.
and like in the end, he wasn't. You know, he was just like a king attempting to usurp and everything, and it just kind of felt like a real character. And versus like Jafar, or I'm gonna say Jafar because I'm
It'll
just
be
used to that.
easier to say Jafar, but it is
Right,
Jafar. Just
but Jafar, he just kind of just seems like out of like just kind of like even self-destructively evil in some cases, where he's just like he's just doing these things without really having to seem to have a further plan. Like he's turning him into a dog or blinding him without doing any kind of like long-term plan for it. He's just kind of like, oh, these guys are like this, they'll never break this. But then he even puts a different curse on them that they'll turn back to normal once he gets the princess and everything, which is like I never understood why he did that.
not even once he gets her, once he kisses her, like it would have been.
Right.
That
It's
didn't
just
really solve anything.
it just he just seemed like he was just putting all this stuff up specifically so he could get knocked right back down.
It is the giant machine that has a self destruct button on it, is basically what it is.
Essentially, yeah. Which I'm fine with in the end. It's just meant to be like a family kids movie sort of deal. But when I'm comparing that to another movie that's well, technically equally could have been a family movie, it had much better written characters, some almost 20 years prior. I'm just like, it's hard to defend it.
Almost all of the characters are better written. I would love to see, like, I'm gonna be honest, I was thinking this when I was watching the movie, but I'd love to see some Three Stooges style shorts with the three princes.
Yeah, I was thinking that's where it was going to be going, honestly.
I really like the Persian prince.
Like I thought they were going to be like screwing with each other as they're going along. Like each one is sending spies after the other, and each one like attempts to sabotage them, but that inadvertently turns back on themselves or
I
something.
like
I
the
was like,
wacky races where the Mongol king like
exactly.
sets out an oil trap or flips the sign to Persia so they go the wrong way.
And then they end up just sabotaging all each other, and then Ahmed just kind of walks in with basically like just some cheap little trinket that he's able to say is the rarest thing of all. Like I thought,
Oh, that'd be
I seriously,
nice.
I seriously thought that the whole thing was going to end with Ahmed otherwise being just like unable to find all these things because he doesn't have the resources of all these princes. And meanwhile, while they're all screwing with each other, he literally returns empty-handed and asks for the princess's hand as if to say, "This woman is the rarest treasure of all." And I was going to be
Oh,
like, "Oh,
that really would be like they all come back with gold and magic tartan
right,
carpets and whatever, and he comes back with like a macaroni card.
yeah, exactly,
That would really fit into the happiness is what you make it theme that they were going for.
right." Which I'm still happy with how it did end. I thought it was really cool. Like I was like, oh shit,
Yeah.
he's just straight up gonna become his own genie, like, and like make a literal 100,000 person army, like 100,000 strong army to come take back Baghdad and everything. I was like, all right, that's yeah, next level. Let's go for it.
Yeah, that's cool.
Like, go big or go home on that one. Which again, that scene alone, like casting in those older movies, must have been so much fun. Just to being like, we just need a whole bunch of people to show up in these costumes that we made way too many of. Let's go.
That was a great scene where it pans over the crowd of the army that he created at the first gate. I'm like,
Yeah,
how many people is this? How big is that lot that they're
yeah.
filming this on?
As it was so cool. Which you also need to watch. Just as a note, you need to watch Waterloo. I don't know if I told you about that one.
You have, and I still have not,
It's
but I
it's
should.
it's decent. It's very history movie, but it's worth it if only for just seeing how big the scenes are and how like they have like 50,000 extras or something.
All right, I'll try to watch it. I'll try to
Yeah,
watch it for next time.
yeah. Consider that part of my recommendations, people. Go see Waterloo. It's awesome.
I am not going to have
It's got
nearly as
Orson Welles
good.
in it very briefly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he
That's funny
plays.
because the DVD I have for the 1924 version has an introduction by Orson Welles.
Oh,
Where he's like, "This is a cinematic masterpiece."
it may have been was it Orson Welles? It was either him or another guy who I keep mixing up with. I'm pretty sure it's Orson Welles.
Ah,
But yeah, he's in it very briefly as like the new King Louis right before he gets ousted once Napoleon comes back.
oh, that's neat. All right,
His maybe 10 minutes of screen time, maybe.
I'll have to see that. But this
Yeah.
isn't Waterloo cast.
All right, geez.
um, I do wanna make a point to say that I like the characterizations in the 24 version better for the most part.
Uh-huh.
Uh, the Caliph or Sultan or whatever you want to call him in the 1924 version is just sort of an authoritarian figure, though, which is all he needs to be, really.
Right.
But in the 40 version, they do a really good job of making him his own character, like a
Oh
big
yeah.
kid.
And I did like that.
Yeah, he still cares for his daughter. I think he has very big parallels to the Sultan in Disney's Aladdin.
He does, and I'm
Uh,
pretty yeah, I'm sure the 1940 version did more to inspire Aladdin than probably any other form of media of
Probably.
this story. Which
Probably. Or
which
maybe one of
obviously
the
you've
other
also
Thieves of Baghdad, which we haven't seen.
right. And which you've also mentioned that um Aladdin itself is also based off a couple other stories from the Arabian Nights.
Yeah, Aladdin and his secret lamp, I think it's called,
Right.
is the
So,
story. But
quite a few things.
yeah, no, he's a fun character. I like all his trinkets and how easily he's convinced by Jafar. You know what? That has to be the Disney sort of thing. Like he just walks in the room. He's like, "Well, don't let the people have time, or you're not the king of time anymore, are you?" And the Sultan's like, "Oh, I guess not. Well, let me
Oh
show you this
no.
funny thing."
Anyway, yeah, that does seem to be like a big Disney trope, kind of like bumbling authority character.
Yeah, and the advisor who just cannot wait for them to be gone.
Yeah, advisor who has been playing this since before they knew they could. Like my God, like it is codified the idea that an advisor in any form of media is a bad guy.
Yeah, I wonder where that started. It's a really easy trope
I'm
to
almost
fall
certain
into, but
it must have started like well, okay, it probably started in history.
well, okay, you know what
Yeah,
you know what I mean. I wonder if
I
there's
know.
a specific example that informed people's opinions of it, though. That'd
I
be
mean, like
good
there's
history research.
like I know that a couple Shakespeare plays even have that kind of trope. So it's kind of hard to say when it started exactly. I think everyone just doesn't like the guy who is very near power but doesn't quite get to have it. Everyone's a little distrusting of
Okay,
him.
yeah. Well, when you put it like that, obviously, yeah, stuff like Hamlet and I
Right.
mean,
Hamlet, Othello,
not
technically.
explicitly an advisor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
So, yeah. I think it's just existed because people are paranoid, or that they have reason to be paranoid.
Yeah.
So,
Um. So I don't think we're really going to be able to find out what version you watched compared to mine, but I watched the Kino video release, which I believe was printed around 2004, but the soundtrack for it this is the 1924 version, by the way.
uh,
The soundtrack for it is really good. I would have to check the back of the DVD to see, and I don't have it on me, but they just took the sheet music that they had on hand for what the soundtrack was supposed to be, and they just did it.
Hmm.
but present day for that time with their own orchestra and everything, and it sounds really cool. I just can't imagine, like, having been in band at one point, I can't imagine playing for an entire movie
Yeah,
score.
it's that. Yeah, it's got to be a challenge. I mean, but also, an incredible, thing. It must have been incredible to witness. Movies
Oh,
must have been.
definitely.
Movies were like hella big, like a hella big thing back then. When we really think about it, it's like they had fucking whole orchestras and everything going on it.
I mean, yeah, they were like events. It was such a new form of
Right.
entertainment. Not
And
even
I've
at the
even
time, but they just kept getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah, and I've desperately wanted to try to find events where I can go to that because I've told you once before, but there was a time when I actually watched the original Phantom of the Opera in a cathedral on Halloween with a live organist playing the
Oh
soundtrack, and it
God,
was amazing. My God.
that sounds great. I mean, where I am at the moment, like where I'm living,
Right.
I just have to sort of settle for trying to find theaters that will screen old movies. Period. And
Oh yeah, same.
I actually found one. It's going to be screening the original Father of the Bride. Uh,
Ooh.
I think at the end of April. So I kind of want to go see that. But outside of that, I don't get a lot of that stuff here. But that'd be cool.
Hmm.
That'd be really neat.
Yeah, but this isn't watching old movies in theaters podcast. We are on another thing. We've
We're
really been.
really
This
going
is
into that a lot. This is tangent cast, isn't it?
yeah. It's I don't know what it is about these movies. Like they're both like deep and complex and everything, but also it's like they aren't too easy to continue to talk about because like they're at the end of the day they're family movies. We tend to end up going with either more dramatic movies or at least more modern family movies that have a bit more depth to them. But swashbucklers, kind of by nature, are pretty straightforward.
If I'm being honest, I really have covered like pretty almost everything that I wanted to talk about. I think.
Yeah, I mean, we could bring up the your cold opener of how the of the foot play thing.
That was disgusting. Okay, so
Yeah,
the
the
genie
another
has like disgusting makeup. Uh
yeah, the genie just it wasn't like they really didn't need to have it. Like there's so many just excessive plot points with that, and that one just kind of codified it.
I so he had like these long disgusting fingernails, and of course he was dressed very scantily clad, which is exactly what I was wanting to see.
Essentially a
Um
cloth diaper.
yeah, great.
It's like, bleh.
You know what? Diaper and foot play in one movie. This is quite a
Oh
film.
God, no, God, I shouldn't have brought it up.
If only he had vored Abu, we would have the holy trinity. But no, he has this awful makeup with these disgusting fingernails and toenails, and it keeps showing close-ups of him like trying to squash Abu with this giant foot. It's really it really is disgusting, and I couldn't stand it. I had trouble watching it.
It's like, yeah, they, I mean, they go all out for those movies. I feel like they went all out for a lot of scenes back then, but there's a certain point I have to go, like, you didn't have to do that. It
You
was
really
really just
didn't.
not necessary.
Oy. Something I did find though, talking about they really did go all out with special effects, or at least they tried to for the time. Uh, in the amount of research I did, I found out apparently the 1940 version was a pioneer for blue screen effects, uh,
Okay.
which is what the
The, like,
entire movie was.
I mean, yeah, I guess I remember that now. It's like I was thinking about it, it's
Yeah.
like, it was like, what scenes were that? Then I remember, the genie flying across mountains tops and everything. I was like, okay, yeah.
hmm I like
Which,
went.
like,
I had never heard of blue screening before, so I like went down a rabbit hole trying to figure out what it was, and I was like, oh, it's just green screening but blue. But
yeah, it's
is
better.
there a reason to use one over the other? Oh no, there's not really. Okay.
I think green screen you can see the edges a bit easier usually, at least for grander scenes. Like I remember with Clash of the Titans.
Yeah, yeah, I
Like
can see
compare that
that.
to the blues. Compare that to the screen work we saw in this one. Like much
Yeah,
better in this one.
and maybe it's more common for characters. Maybe it's just maybe more often characters will have blue aspects to their clothing than they will green, It's a softer color, really.
Right.
That might play into it a little bit.
Plus, I think it's mostly because it absorbs the light from being reflected off of it as much. Because with the green screen, you'll often see kind of green edges on the sides of actors, and that's just because they have a light shining on them that's reflecting back.
Yeah.
And so
Well,
blue tends to be a bit easier on that.
where was all this information when I was reading these articles? We're really doing the work for the community.
I mean, I'm not basing this on any kind of known fact. I'm just assuming.
It's sound thought processes though. Thought
I mean, fair enough.
processes.
But yeah, it's like the effects were pretty decent in this one, and obviously the 24 effects were great because they had to work with what they had there, and it's there's some obvious film tricks like certain shots being played in reverse, or a camera is held at a different angle and that sort of thing.
It's
It's
way
just, it's
easier to hide that stuff in those years of silent film too.
yeah, it's like you just kind of have cuts like that and everything where it's like everything's already there. It's not being put in post or anything. It's just it has to make sure it looks realistic still.
Yeah.
So,
Neither of these films were really bad in terms of visual effects, which just leads
oh
me to
yeah,
wonder what the hell was going on with the original Clash of the Titans.
yeah, they
That
really,
didn't have a piss poor budget either.
yeah. I don't. It really is weird with that. Like, did all that budget go into the Jim Henson stuff? Like, that it would make sense. And I know that whole process is expensive, but man,
Maybe
they
it
had
went
such
into
tiny
booking Laurence
sets.
Olivier.
Oh yeah, it's it really is weird to think about. I don't know. It's like there's just it's maybe it's just like just difference in studio quality and everything. I don't know.
Yeah, this was I wasn't anticipating this since I hadn't seen these films before, but this really was quite a series of films to come off of Clash of the Titans with, huh? Uh, they have a striking amount of similarities between them.
Yeah, that is true.
You just get that with it's sort of the fantasy setting. There's lots of scenes of flying around, the geography. Uh,
I mean, hell,
Sometimes
you
they
could
try to be explicit with, but it's not too great.
and you could make the argument that Clash of the Titans was a swashbuckler as well.
You
I
can.
mean,
He had a sword.
yeah. I mean, it's like it's kind of the whole adventure thing and all, but it's so steeped in the Greek mythos that it's more just a Greek movie.
Yeah, you can really see that though. And hey, there's a lot of connection between The Thief of Baghdad 1940 and Clash of Titans 2010 because they both have very disappointing villain deaths or disposals of. I guess Hades didn't die, but
Right.
very anticlimactic endings, I'll say.
Yeah. It's, yeah, and like I was about to say, it's like man, they didn't even really do anything with the one in 1924 as well. But it was like, what did they end up doing with the Mongol King? I don't remember. It kind of came all together there at the end.
Well, that's why in my synopsis I kind of said that he was presumably captured because his slave informs him that he should try to steal the princess and take off on the Persian magic carpet.
Hmm.
But in the meantime, Ahmed is storming the castle. It's a bunch of nonsense shots that don't really flow together because you don't know the layout of the palace really well. I meant to say
Right.
palace, not castle. But the last you see of the Mongol king, he sort of is like cowering from a bunch of guards, and that's it. So I just assume he got captured
And I think that
and
really does
probably
kind of
beheaded.
yeah, and I guess that kind of illustrates the difference of like what the main conflict is in each of these movies. Like the main conflict in 24 is mostly of Ahmed with himself, like trying to become like go from just being a common thief to a truly righteous man, but also one, able to pursue his own happiness rather than, trivial, treasures and everything. And then the 40 version, it's a pretty stock standard bad guy versus good guy thing.
Yeah, when you're comparing the antagonists too, I mean you're absolutely right because
Yeah.
We as people, from the very first moment that Cham Sheng is introduced, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'll just
I
call
don't
him the
know.
Mongolian prince. Um,
Yeah, that's probably
yeah,
better.
we can't work with pronunciations because it's a silent film. But
Yeah, yeah.
from the very first moment that that character is introduced, the audience knows that he's up to no good, but the characters don't. He doesn't really have an evil turn per se until the end of the film, where he has all of his Mongolian warriors in hiding spring up
Right.
to attack. Meanwhile, Jafar is the stereotypical snidely whiplash villain throughout the entire thing.
Right. Like he's wearing black sultanate robes the entire time, which is like fucking why? like it doesn't look like he's a leader of any kind compared to the other rulers we end up seeing. Like he's just wearing black cloaks. That's just it.
Yeah, and okay, the magic stuff with Jafar, I want to talk about that really quick.
Please.
Did that throw you for a bit?
Absolutely.
They don't like
Right.
introduce the magic at all. He just
And
you
that's kind
watch the
of
movie for like 30 minutes and then he blinds him and turns the other guy into a dog and you're like, "What?" But
right.
everyone just accepts it.
And I had briefly brought that up earlier just with like how the worlds didn't feel like how the first one kind of like really steeped itself in just that there's just magic in the world and people are almost casual about it versus the 40 version for a long time just being pretty realistic for the most part, at least it's not introducing fantasy elements and then just coming out of nowhere with Jafar just being like, "Hey, I have magic now." It does not establish it at all.
That was absurd is what it was.
Like he goes through the whole process of luring Ahmed down into the market to go listen to a guy speak like passionately against the king, and then use that as an opportunity to like arrest him for like conspiracy against the king and everything. And then after that, he just goes, "All right, I'll just blind you." Like you could have done any of this beforehand. You had him at your mercy at all times.
Which there's a clinical case of Superman if I ever saw one. He doesn't like conceal his face. Why do not just like the people like that are conspiring, why do the guards not recognize him?
Right.
Why does no one recognize the sultan, the king of Baghdad?
Yeah. It's just it really just kind of throws the whole thing for a loop, and it really does just kind of reflect how poorly rewritten the whole story was. Like they could have very easily just made Ahmed just the thief again, and then kind of stuck with that, which in the end they ended up doing with Aladdin. But still,
Yeah. And like I
it's
said, who knows how the other two I think I saw there were two Thief of Bagdads between 1940 and between 1994's Aladdin, so who knows how they handled it or how they changed the story.
yeah,
But
we may end up visiting those again for a double feature of They Remade It Again.
we may have to. We'll just do a follow up to this one with those two, and
Yeah.
we'll do a third follow up with Aladdin since the new Aladdin's coming out. So we're just gonna have a
Oh
trinity of
God.
these Thief of Baghdad episodes, really.
Yeah. It really is weird how we have been stumbling upon that more and more often, where there's actually a lot of remakes of one particular movie, like between this and A Star Is Born, and there was another one we had talked about recently. I'd actually learned that
Oh,
Wizard
Wizard
of
of
Oz
Oz. Yeah.
actually was also had an earlier version, and it's really like and that's kind of we kind of knew that going into the show, like kind of exploring the idea of remakes is like how far back this whole thing kind of goes.
Well,
Like
we were told when we were first planning the show, like, how long do you think that you'll last with that premise? Like, but it's like remakes are not a new thing. We've known that.
yeah.
We talked about that in the introduction to the podcast, but we didn't know how deep they went.
Oh yeah. And like we started the show mostly because like we had been observing how much a lot of 80s culture was being brought up and how everyone was talking about like you know how in the 80s were legendary for the amount of good movies that they made. It's and so we were just like, what if we look back on that? What if we started comparing these things, what the problem is and everything? And then it's just like, oh no, this is really just going far back now.
In reality, you could say this podcast would never exist if it wasn't for Ready Player One.
Oh god, yeah, that really was the spark, wasn't it?
It kind of was. We were talking about it a lot.
Yeah, and we for like the first couple episodes, that was kind of our the first before we had been watching a lot of movies beforehand. That was kind of our opener for a lot of time, just bashing on Ernest Cline.
It was the go-to for a bit. They're making Ready Player One too,
It
but
should
let's
be
not
Ready
talk
Player
about that.
Two.
It probably is called Ready Player Two, but
Okay, cool.
I remember seeing the article, but
Yeah. At this point, it's not even an anger thing. I'm just like, okay, fucking whatever.
at this
I
point,
really
this
don't
isn't
care.
even a Thief of Baghdad podcast. We
Yeah, we
really have.
really are just slipping off with this one. It's been a long week, I think, for the both of us. And this one's,
To be honest, I have gone through all of my notes that I have in front of me. Like, there
yeah,
wasn't
it's
that
like,
much that I wanted to cover.
yeah, and like, there's only so much also, and that's kind of also the problem with this topic. There really is only so much we can go into because we both, A, don't know hardly anything about the original source material, that being the Arabian Nights, and B, it's steeped in a culture that we have absolutely no right or knowledge to give critical analysis to in some cases. Because, like, we both, like, both of us are hardly could consider ourselves religious, but we grew up in a Christian culture,
Yeah,
and so we haven't exactly had a lot of exposure to this kind of mythos, and also a lot of the exposure that we have had has been mostly negative. It's a very divisive world out there these days. So it's kind of hard to really bring up cultural differences and everything. Like, it's easy enough when it's something like, comparing a movie that went from an Asian market like to an American market, like Ghost in the Shell or Infernal Affairs to The Departed, or the other way around with Karate Kid, because there's just so many fundamental, because they literally were made by just different cultures. Like, one of them was made in China, one of them was made in America.
you know what? I think that that's probably where it stems from, because I wouldn't
Right.
say that we have an authority to talk on like Chinese or Japanese culture either. But both of these pictures, both of them are American adaptations of that
Right.
culture. So we don't have uh if one of these was like a Middle Eastern picture, then we would have something to compare it to. But
Mm-hmm. Because,
we
like,
don't
then we
have
can at least,
that baseline.
because at least in that case we could trust that's coming from a culture that knows this probably back to front, or at least at the very least it knows it in the context where it was first thought of.
Oh,
but
definitely.
but it's difficult to say anything in this case of how accurate it was to the source material, or how maybe tasteless or some scene might have been. Like, there may be some scenes in each movie that, when shown to someone who's actually Middle Eastern, who actually knows the original myth and legend and everything, would see this and be like, that's horrible, or that's racist, or that sort of thing. It's like, we can't make those acknowledgments. We just can't, at least not reasonably. And so it's just, we're kind of in a tight position here where the most we can kind of go off of is pretty objective observances. And so
Yeah,
otherwise, we've gotten that.
we
We've kind
we
of gotten
did.
all
Yeah,
that down pat.
we nailed it.
Yeah.
We
And
nailed
so,
it this time around. Can I just mention how I I didn't really talk about it when I brought it up, but how strange. Why is the character of Abu played by a man named Sabu? How did that happen?
I don't, I don't know. I mean, I think that kid may have just been like, I don't know. I don't really know anything about that younger actress. Actor. I'm so sorry.
He's probably fine or dead. So,
Potentially.
either or.
Yeah, I think that just may have been just his name. He may not have had a last name. Again, that's
Oh,
another
he
cultural
didn't
difference.
according to the internet. He didn't according to the internet. I just thought it was strange coincidence, I guess. Uh, hmm. Well, tell me this then. Let's elongate this just a little bit more. Who is your
Yeah.
favorite character in both films?
Uh, honestly, honestly, like, simple answer for it, I know, but I really did think Ahmed was the best character. Like, I think that's, which I think it actually speaks volumes to the quality of the writing, but I really did think he had the best arc. His personality was fun. Didn't seem like, you know, a very black and white hero. He did seem like, oh, he's a thief and he's trying to get by, but he's not, inherently good. He's not inherently evil. And you literally see him have this growth of going from literally outright mocking a, you know, a moment of prayer or a moment of just like these religious gatherings and everything, either straight up laughing at them or using them as an advantage to steal more stuff, to literally going on his knees to the priest of this mosque to be like, I need help. I truly believe what I have found is something good and something that I need to protect, but I can't do it because I know I am, a lesser man. It's like, yeah, that's super cool. We so rarely see that in any kind of protagonist where they literally are broken down by not just like exterior motivations, which he was in this case. Like he was literally beaten at one point when he was witnessing when he was trying to court the princess, but literally like spiritually he was like, I am having a crisis. Like I think this is truly a good thing, but I'm not a good man. So I thought it was really cool how we were able to actually witness it.
Good answer.
Woo.
What
Yeah,
about
I mean,
1940?
Abu because he was fun.
Who?
Abu because he was fun.
Oh, there you go.
I,
That's good.
I really don't have that much. There isn't a whole lot of depth to that one, so that's the most I can go with. Abu, I think, was just kind of the spirit of the whole film.
That's fair.
So,
He was sort of the main character after
yeah,
a while.
yeah. Early, I mean, he should have been the main character the whole time.
He should have been. He should have been, but
Yeah, which in the end he does. With again Aladdin.
yeah, Aladdin.
Technically,
Basically Aladdin,
yeah,
except King before.
yeah. That one was weird.
Uh, hmm.
But yeah. What about you?
What about me? Oh,
For favorite
character.
characters, yeah. The question you asked.
Well, I already said my favorite character in the 1924 version was the portly Persian.
True.
He was fun, and I thought he was a good actor because he was really good at making faces and waving his arms.
Oh yeah,
Like,
very very expressive.
like when at the very end of the film when Ahmed comes in and it's revealed that he's like saved the day. I like that it's basically the Caliph like saying they can be wed, like, you are a good man, you can be wed now, and in the background he's so the Persian is so happy to be free and not dunked into a big oil vat. He's like
Oh, yeah.
waving his arms in the air and like shouting, but you can't hear it because it's a silent picture, but I just know he was really shouting.
Yeah,
He's a lot of
he
fun.
was into it.
I,
Yeah.
I aspire to have that much fun in something.
We need to get into a film at some point. Just be like extras, just going crazy in the background.
That'd be great. We should do more. Why aren't we doing more film work?
That's an excellent question. With how much we talk about this, it's a shame that neither of us have ever actually tried to do anything like that.
Oh well, that's not my scene.
I guess same.
And then for 1940 version, it's a toss up for me between the Sultan, who again was like just a fun characterization.
Right.
I like it, very childlike, and he says like multiple times he likes his toys and statues more than his people, which I think
Yeah.
is just a great thing to say to random company.
Yeah, it's like these things are better than the people I lord over. Care for
And
some tea.
Honey Merchant was very fun.
Oh yeah, the. Well, you can explain it.
Well, he was just a merchant in the market that was like selling honey, and he got conned out of honey
Yeah, good
by
point.
Ahmad and Abu. I'm gonna give it to the Sultan because he's an actual character, but for
Yeah.
some reason, Honey Merchant like sticks in my mind as like a fun guy. I don't even think he did anything except get mad, but
Mm-hmm.
he seemed like fun.
I mean, they really did actually really well with their side characters in the 1940 version. I should give it that kind of credit. Like pretty much all their side characters were, either they were people of color and presumably of Middle Eastern descent, and so they all seemed, very good at what they were doing, and they were very into it. So,
Mm-hmm. I agree.
yeah,
For what it's worth, like that is true. The guy at the beginning who is like getting Abu, the dog version of Abu, to like tell him which of his coins are fake. He was interesting.
yeah, which I don't know if that's a grand praise or kind of an admonishment of a film when I say the side characters were memorable.
That they're way more interesting.
Yeah, they're way more dynamic than any of the people we actually had to stay with.
I'd say it's a genuine compliment that comes off as a backhanded compliment, but for good reason.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. It's like it's kind of their own fault that they're like you can have both good main characters and side characters. So
Yeah. There's no reason not to.
yeah.
I don't know. I think that's where we stand with this though. You don't have anything else, do you?
Not really. I mean, like, you know, I couldn't really
I mean, no.
I couldn't really think of many recommendations for each of these. Like I mentioned Errol Flynn and Aladdin before, which those are the two big comparable ones, at least for the 1940s version. You know, for the 24 version, really just Metropolis, just a lot of just silent film in general. There's a lot of them that, you know, the big names you've I'm sure everyone hears every now and again. They really are worth it to go see at some point. They are a slog, I will not lie, often, but they are worth it if only for the visuals.
That's good. I mean, but what do you want me to say? Aladdin? I really don't have any recommendations for this because I don't have any what I consider to be comparable media that you haven't already mentioned. So,
I mean, I'd almost say, like, you know, I'd recommend watching this movie if you were interested in seeing some of the stuff where Aladdin may have come from.
I mean,
you know,
that's
just
true.
kind of do it the other way around. It's very cool seeing kind of movies that inspired later movies and that sort of thing.
I would definitely, go out and see Metropolis. I haven't seen Errol Flynn, but go out and see that too, I guess. So,
yeah. And obviously, it's kind of clear where we stand on it. I definitely prefer the 24 version, which, like,
oh yeah, I do too. I just wish it wasn't that long.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if I'd ever watch it again if it popped up. Like, I'd probably watch a little bit of it if it popped up on TV. But also, that being said, I don't know if I'd ever watch the 1940 version either, because it's just kind of dull. It's like, that's kind of the worst. That's kind of the biggest thing I can say about it. It's like, I can't talk about it that long because, like, just wasn't that interested in what was going on. Everything was so off, like, kind of random that it never really seemed to have any kind of tension.
I would definitely watch the 24 version again if it was like a truncated version, you know, whittle down the street crime, whittle down how long it takes for all of the suitors to march in and not touch the rose bush. Just cut a lot of the really long stuff down to its essential form, and I would definitely watch it again.
I mean, I think they did that. It's called Aladdin.
Haha.
That's pretty much all I can say about it.
That's fair. Okay, let me do this.
Read the socials.
Let me see what I can do. They Remade It at gmail.com for any suggestions. At It Remade on Twitter. At They Remade It on Instagram. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Like, comment, and subscribe. Like, comment, you know what? That works. That actually does work.
We've become like early 20-teen, you know, YouTubers now.
That really does work, though, for most platforms, especially iTunes. You can find us on most any podcasting platform. I don't know, Podbean, iHeartRadio, Spotify, not Spreaker. I've been watching you, Spreaker. Keep emailing me about audio limit. I don't have the money to upgrade. I don't know. We're on Stitcher too, which is fun.
You can find us a lot of places. We kind of get around.
Oh yeah, we just get passed around like a cheap whore.
I was thinking of saying it, but I was like, maybe not. But you went there, so thank you.
That's because I have class. All right.
I was gonna make a sand joke. It's like we get everywhere like sand, because you know
sands.
Because you know it's the desert and like Arabian Nights and everything.
Oh, I thought you said sands.
Sand, not the Undertale character.
Okay. That's it though. All right.
Yeah. Sands. As always, I am your host, Stuart.
And I've been your host, Jacob.
We're not Sands. Have a good night.
Bye.
Listen. Inside my bottle for the first 1,000 years, I swore that I'd enrich the one that freed me with all the riches of the earth. But in the second 1,000 years, my imprisoned spirit turned to vengeance on all that lived and were free. And I swore that I'd kill him that freed me to satisfy that hate. Are you ready?